You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. So Joe Biden's debate performance was awful. It was far worse than I think anybody expected, except for me. I was actually doing a live broadcast, a live whatever, debate watch with Joe Altman over at Frank's Speech and Conservative Daily. And I admitted I thought he was going to be worse. I really did. I thought that he was going to be worse than that. So the fact that he was not tells me that at least they got some measure of drugs in him, and he was only abysmal. He wasn't absolutely catastrophic, which I was expecting him to be. But everybody else is like, oh my gosh, that was so bad. And everybody else is pretending like this isn't exactly the Joe Biden that we've been seeing for the last 2 months. Now, keep in mind, I want to make this clear because it has been about 2 months. If you look before, Joe Biden was awful. I mean, even before he was in the White House, he was awful. During that campaign in 2020, he was awful. I mean, he could barely speak. He was confused all the time, telling stupid stories and everything. But he wasn't as bad until he got in the White House. Then I guess the stress started getting to him, the dementia started kicking in, and he just got worse. He was deteriorating rapidly. But here in the last couple of months, he has actually deteriorated far, far more. Like it's been my wife, God forbid this were true, but my wife said, look, he looks like he's almost dead, and you might say, God forbid, why? But I don't want anybody dead. Okay. I mean, look, as bad as he is, I would love to get him out of politics, out of the White House and probably in jail where he belongs. But I don't want him dead. Okay. So that's why, in case anybody's like, oh my gosh, is Rucker a Biden supporter? No, I just don't want the dude to die, anyway. So yeah, the last couple of months he's been deteriorating rapidly, which is why we know, number one, we know two things from that. Number one, this was pre-planned. Everything that we've seen, the narratives were pre-planned. You actually had like a New York Times article that looked as if it was written a while back. I mean, there were telltale signs that it was actually written like at least last week, if not the week before, and just launched as soon as the debate was over, saying, hey, we need to replace Joe Biden. You see these over, I think SAC-B had an article, a very similar article, that, again, looked pre-written before the debate. It wasn't like people were sitting there thinking, oh, hopefully Joe's going to have a good debate. And then they were like, oh, my gosh, that's crazy. This guy's got like dementia or something. We didn't know. And of course, you have the unified narrative that was coming from corporate media on television. CNN, MSNBC, all the networks started using the exact same words. They're saying that talking to Democrats, the Democrats are panicked. Everybody's panicked. They're panicking. I forgot who it was, but somebody was talking to a Democrat, apparently a Democrat lawmaker who will remain anonymous, apparently. But they were saying, yeah, we were watching them. We just wanted to jump off a bridge. It's like, no, they didn't. This wasn't a shock to anybody. Even last week, the Daily Mail posted a story that said, look, hey, they're going to try to get rid of Joe through the debate. And here's how they're going to try to do it. And it was, I would say, 80% accurate. It was off by a bit. There are a few things that were different. I personally have been saying that Joe Biden was going to be replaced since last year. Okay. I mean, not trying to toot my horn here, but it's like, guys, I don't understand why everybody's saying, I've been saying, hey, Trump shouldn't be attacking Joe Biden. Trump should be attacking Democrats with everything. We should all be just attacking Democrats because it's Democrat policies that are causing the problems in America. It's not just Joe Biden. It's not just Kamala Harris. It's not their handlers. It's not the uniparty swamp or the deep state or the global elite cabal. It's not any one of these things. It's all of them. All of the leftists, the radical policies that are encompassed by the Democrat Party right now, all of those are bad. And that's what's causing the problem. That's the narrative that we need to be pushing because, hey, there's various reasons to do that, but the biggest reason is because Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee. Okay, he's not going to be on the ballot. And I've been saying this for months now. And now, unfortunately, nobody listened to me. So and they're like, oh, talk about how Joe pooped his pants. Talk about how Joe is ruining Afghanistan. Call up Joe Biden's open borders. And it's like, no, it's the Democrats. It's the Democrats. Focus on the Democrats because all the attacks on Joe Biden, all of the cumulative attacks, and there's been plenty of great ones, all of the cumulative attacks on Joe Biden up till today and even beyond today, okay, even beyond today, they're for naught, okay? I mean, they'll be reversed. Once they have a replacement for Joe, all those attacks will be reversed. If they were attacking Democrats and their policies, different story. Instead, they decided to, everybody's piling on Joe, and now, okay, well, all of that work, Joe's gone, so yeah, I guess hopefully the new president won't poop his pants. Not the president, new candidate won't poop his pants. So we'll see. So let's go through the scenarios real quick. There are a few different scenarios of how they will replace him. One is very simple, and we'll just start with that one. That is that Joe Biden steps down. Not necessarily as president. I don't think he's going to step down as president. He might, if they want that as kind of like a carrot for Kamala Harris, give her a few months in the Oval Office to flex her muscles and get ready for her next life move, next political career move after this situation, because it won't matter who the president is. She won't be the vice president if she's not with Joe Biden. So maybe they'll promise her a Supreme Court justice seat, God forbid. But whatever, we'll see what they do with her. That's the only reason that he would step down. Otherwise, they'll just keep him in as president, but he won't be the nominee. And if that were to happen, and again, I think this is the most likely scenario, if that were to happen, the question is when. Now, here's the sad part, or not sad, but here's the crazy part, is that it's actually going to be easier for Democrats, for the DNC, to put in the person they want if he waits until after the Democrat convention in August. Because if after the Democrat convention in August, that's when they have a lot more leeway. They will only have to convince basically the 400 active members of the Democrat National Committee. They will have to do a vote between the 500 or so of them, and then they just need a majority to select who the nominee is. If they were to do it ahead of time, there's a quagmire there, because Joe Biden has so many of the delegates already. He's got nearly all of them, okay? Which means that there's no, basically, if he were to do it now, they wouldn't be able to just pick who they want. I mean, it would be they could, but they would have to go through PR, make a bunch of phone calls, get on the phones with the delegates, get a unified plan. And I'm not saying they won't do this. I'm just saying that it's from an ease perspective. It would be easier for them to just wait until afterwards. Then getting the DNC to pick a nominee would be much easier than getting the delegates to agree on a nominee in the first ballot, because that's what they don't want this to be drawn out. And then again, you might think that their strategy is to have it drawn out. Let's get 2 or 3 options out there, and we'll make it look as if there's a democratic process happening at the DNC, when in reality they would have already pre-selected their person or whoever that is. So that is the easiest way, is for him to just step down. And there are already calls from people saying, hey, Dr. Jill, Taco Jill needs to step in and tell her husband that it's time, or Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi need to get with him, or Obama needs to get with him, or they all need to sit down and have an intervention with him, or whatever. And they all need to just tell him, Joe, it's time to leave with dignity. They'll use the word dignity a lot with Joe. Joe, it's time to leave with dignity. But at the end of the day, he still has to agree. He is still the president of the United States, mostly. So he would have to agree to do this. And if they can't get him to agree, there is another option. It's a weird option they actually put into place last year. But, the one not weird option is that he could die. I mean, I guess that would be weird, but it's not out of the question. And like I said, my wife thinks that he's already dying right now. So, if he were to fall over in the next few weeks, I don't think anybody would be that surprised. There might be some conspiracy theorists out there that say, oh, he was poisoned, or he was whatever, and maybe he was. We'll never know. I mean, we can't even tie anything to the Clintons, who their kill list is so long and it's so obvious, and we can't tie anything to that. Do you think we're going to catch whoever were to take out Joe Biden? Again, I'm not trying to say that they would do this. I'm just saying that it's possible. But if he were to die even of natural causes, that's one way that obviously he could be replaced. The other way that they just recently added last year was through disability. And that disability is very ambiguous. The bylaws for the DNC are not very clear about what that means. Is it possible that they could get a doctor to declare that he is mentally disabled based upon senility, even Alzheimer's, dementia? Yeah, I think that is possible. But again, that's only if he doesn't willingly step down. So you got 3 options there. He steps down willingly, either before or after the convention. He dies willingly or unwillingly, either before or after the convention, or he is removed through a process that lists him as disabled. Now, here's the kicker there, though. There's a complication with that scenario, because then obviously if he's declared unable to be the candidate, then it brings up the whole 25th Amendment concept of, well, if he can't be a candidate, he definitely can't be president, so we need to get rid of him as well. And that would start that entire process. And then they would still be pressing for him to step down, and then they've got to deal with Kamala Harris being the person. So those are the crazy ways that it could happen. But those who say that it can't happen, I saw that a lot actually last night on the sudden surge of constitutional experts and attorneys on Twitter saying it's too late. It's too late. They can't be replaced. He can be replaced. Okay. He can be replaced. He's probably almost certainly, I'd give it about an 85% chance at this stage that he will be replaced. Okay. I was at 50-50 2 months ago. I'm at 85%. Is there still a possibility that they just won't? Maybe they just don't want to push it that far. Maybe they'll focus down ballot. Maybe they'll try to just take out Trump again further through lawfare. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. But I do know this, that we're in a big, huge mess. Anybody who's celebrating this is silly. Okay? Because I like I said yesterday on yesterday's show, I'm rooting for the guy. I was really hoping he would have a good enough debate to dispel, at least to hold off the wolves long enough to where he can be the nominee. We want Joe Biden to be the nominee. If you're a Trump supporter, I mean, last night's debate proved this is the guy that we want to be running against. Because there's no way that they could cheat enough to beat him or to lose to him, right? I mean, he's our guy. He's the easy button. He's the ticket to the White House. Replacing him is going to change that. Now the question is, who are they going to replace him with? I saw a lot of people talking about Gavin Newsom. You know, he's out there. He's got his $75 trillion smile on. He's got his semi-perfect hair going, and he's just talking. It's like, oh, no, Joe Biden is we've already got our nominee. I'll be voting for Joe Biden in November. And they're asking, but Gavin, you know, everybody's talking about he's got to be replaced, and they're talking about user replacement. He's like, oh, no, gosh, shucks. No, I support Joe. You know, I'm here in Atlanta, the debate, you know, to show my support for the nominee, not because I wanted to get in front of cameras like you folks. Oh, man, I don't even know how to do a Gavin Newsom impersonation. The dude is the creepiest thing ever in politics. Creepier than Kamala Harris. Creepier than Creepy Joe, okay? Gavin Newsom is, it's American Psycho in politics. It's the craziest thing, okay? But everybody's talking about him. I saw there's one story we published over at the Liberty Daily this morning. A lot of people are talking about Big Mike, okay? Could Michelle Obama drop in there? It's conspicuous that she's been kind of... She made a statement recently. She declared why she's not campaigning for Joe Biden. It's because she's got like some kind of beef with him. I actually didn't read the story, but I do know that she's got some kind of beef with him, and the timing of that seems conspicuous. It's like, whoa, she's got a beef with him. Now he bombs the debate. Maybe she's who they're going to airdrop in. Others have talked about Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. The dark horse candidate, to me, the one that I would argue I would be the most concerned about is Wes Moore, out of Maryland. Now, a lot of people say he has no name recognition. Okay. He does. That's true. He doesn't have any name recognition. But then again, there was this guy that I saw at the convention. He spoke at the Democrat National Convention in 2004. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching, I'm like, this guy is kind of a Democrat superstar. I mean, he really does come across well. Nobody had ever heard him. This is just some first-term senator, right? Out of Illinois. You guys obviously know who I'm talking about. But even around 2008, when you got Hillary Clinton is pretty much guaranteed the nomination, then out of nowhere comes this no-name Barack Obama, who starts wooing crowds and getting people excited. Okay? Well, Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, has that same energy. He's young and exciting, at least from a Democrat perspective. Now, you might say there's just not enough time. Maybe if Joe Biden had dropped out last year and it was an open primary, and maybe Wes Moore could be the have time to get national name recognition, because Gavin Newsom's been doing that for 2 years now, 3 years. Obviously Michelle Obama has national name recognition, and Gretchen Whitmer has. They tried to kidnap her. The FBI tried to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, so she's got name recognition, but nobody's ever heard of Wes Moore. I'm just saying he would be sort of like a surprise pick, number one. Number two, I think that as far as, being able to he comes with far less baggage, okay? All the people that they're talking about, even Hillary Clinton, they're talking about now, all of them have huge levels of baggage. Michelle Obama has baggage, tons of baggage. Sorry. Gavin Newsom is loaded with baggage. Okay, he just happens to be the governor of one of the worst performing states in the history of states. Okay, it's like, wow, hey, you really want America to be like California? I don't think so. It'd be a hard press there. But Wes Moore, Maryland governor, just say I'm not making a prediction. I guess I kind of am. I think that I'll go ahead and make the prediction. I'll give him at least a 20% chance that if and when they replace Joe Biden, that it will be Wes Moore that they replace him with. Just throwing that out there, putting that out there for posterity, so that if it happens, I could say, oh my gosh, on June 28th, right after the debate, I said Wes Moore. See, I'm smart. I'm wicked smart. Crazy times, folks. Crazy times. You know what's not crazy though? It's not crazy to look to the future and have a concern, especially after the debate. It's not crazy to think maybe now's the time that I need to look at long-term storage food. Thankfully, we have the answer. Let me roll that beautiful beef footage. I like being a person who focuses on solutions. I don't always have the answers, but I try to at least know 1 or 2 or 5 different ways that we can address an issue. If we're fighting oppression, we know that we must protest. We know that we must be ready to, if necessary, to revolt. If we're fighting against a government that is just doing the wrong things, well, let's figure out who the right people are and get them into office. Those are the types of solutions that just about anybody can offer. If anybody who's out there doing a conservative or alternative news show, they can at least tell you, go vote and go protest, right? But one thing that we have that's unique about us is that we do actually get involved directly with one particular problem. That's long-term survival, preparedness. Just in case, hey, let's say we can't stop the destruction of the United States. Let's say we can't prevent the next cyber attack. Let's say we can't prevent an invasion, God forbid, or anything like that. Then at least we should be able to bug in appropriately. And that's why I'm very proud to be one of the owners of a company that services Americans specifically with long-term storage beef. We're talking about the good stuff. It's not beef crumbles or beef chunks. We're talking about ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin. We're talking about freeze-dried. It's cooked sous vide, so then freeze-dried for a 25-year shelf life. So you're good until 2049 if you buy enough of this stuff. All American beef. We don't import anything. It's born, raised, slaughtered, and then packaged and shipped out from Texas. Doesn't ever leave Texas until it's in a bag heading towards your house. So that's my contribution, so to speak. I know it's not much. I know that there's other people that are fighting really hard, getting into heavy activism, fighting the lawfare side for conservatives and all that good stuff. This is what we've got. I mean, it's different, but hopefully we fulfill a need that you have. Be sure to use promo code JDR. That'll get you the maximum discount at any given time. And as of right now, as you're watching this, that maximum discount is 25% off. So, yeah, stock up. Stock up now. Stock up as much as you possibly can. Get high-quality beef by going to preparewithbeef.com. That's preparewithbeef.com. As I've noted many, many times, including earlier today, I have been pressing for campaigns, not just Trump's campaign, but pretty much every Republican campaign to not focus on Joe Biden. Not just because I thought that he was going to be replaced, but I thought it behooves us to take this unique opportunity of complete disarray and chaos in the United States as far as from a political perspective to take advantage of that and highlight how it's because of Democrat policies. Not just at the national level, also at the state and even city level. We're seeing Democrat cities crumbling, falling apart. The people are being betrayed, especially if they live in a sanctuary city. The economy is absolutely disastrous, despite what you have the media, the Paul Krugers, and then you have the bureaucrats like Janet Yellen claiming, "Oh no, it's not so bad. You know, what are you guys complaining about? You're crazy. It's not that bad. It's just don't look at your bank accounts. Look at the Nobel laureates. They're the ones that know that you can't tell. You're stupid. You're stupid people. You can't look at your bank accounts and see how bad things are. You have to listen to the smart people that we got to that we paid. I mean that we asked. I mean that they randomly just came out and declared that the economy is great and that Trump's the one that's going to hurt it. That's the message. Well, anyway. So, yes, we have that unique opportunity. But, of course, now that it looks like Joe Biden is going to be replaced, now like I said, it's all that effort to rip on Joe Biden and Bidenomics and all that stuff that's going to be wasted. There was an article, or is an article, it's still there, over at thefederalist.com by Kylie Griswold. America is in shambles because of Democrat policies, not just Joe Biden. And I want to highlight this because this is the message that we really, truly have to start getting out there as quickly as possible before he's replaced, and then after he's replaced, and throughout. This isn't about Joe Biden. This is about Democrats. This is about the uniparty swamp, not just Democrats, to be clear. Even the uniparty swamp, the rhino members of that swamp, are also complicit in the destruction of the United States of America in every regard that we're facing today. So according to the article, subheadline is "Don't Buy the Spin. Swapping Biden out for a shiny new Democrat won't save America." Thankfully, somebody is saying what I've been saying for a long time. Good job, Kylie Griswold over at The Federalist. According to the article, CNN spent the hour after Thursday's presidential debate in an emotional tailspin. But at the heart of their desperate analysis was speculation about whether the fumbling Joe Biden would step down to let another Democrat jump in to carry the torch of democracy, which of course we are not in a democracy, which I covered yesterday, but whatever. The jig is up. Here's what disillusioned Democrats and independents and moderates need to know. What all the blue state refugees who now live in Texas and Florida instead of California and New York need to admit. What all the fed up middle-class families and forgotten non-white voters in the suburbs need to remember. These aren't just Joe Biden policies that are disastrous. They're Democrat policies. Abortion, economy, crime, immigration, lawfare, foreign policy, healthcare, it doesn't matter what pet issue has voters down in the dumps. Democrats are in lockstep on the losing side, and anywhere they aren't in lockstep, like on whether Israel is a victim of terrorism or a group of oppressive colonizers, they toe the radical line. You think a Democrat switcheroo is magically going to secure the border and end the unmitigated illegal alien crime wave? At least you've been captive to the corporate media. Here are a few examples, and she lists the examples of the multiple atrocities. Hopefully, none of you all out there in JD Rucker Showville need any reminders about the rampant, disgusting crimes that are being committed by illegal aliens across the country. We're very well aware of those, and yes, we want them to stop. But not a chance. Deferred action for childhood arrivals, Biden's expanded asylum, repeal of outrage to Martha's Vineyard, support for ripping down border razor wire, and playing footsie with Mexican cartels are all fruits of the same poisonous tree. Democrats' antipathy for the U.S. border. That's not a Joe Biden policy. That is a Democrat policy. He only enacted what every Democrat lawmaker in D.C. and out of D.C. has wanted, or at least used to want. A lot of them are coming around and saying, oh my gosh, my political future rests on whether or not I denounce illegal aliens and illegal immigration and all that good stuff, so I better play ball or else I'm done. Outside of those people, you still have the vast majority of Democrat lawmakers and bureaucrats in the federal and state and city governments still pretending like, oh, we have to be so compassionate for all of these millions of single mothers and children who are coming across. Don't mind the military-aged men that account for like 90% of who's crossing the border. They don't want you to look at that. It's delusional to think the governor of Sanctuary State, California, for instance, a possible 2024 replacement would be a workable substitute for Biden. And of course, she is referring to Gavin Newsom, Gruesome Newsom, as we call him over at the libertydaily.com. He has had opportunities to secure the border, and instead, it's gotten worse. Would he be better than Biden on immigration? Absolutely not. He would make the border crisis even worse. What about the economy? Is California a glowing example of economic strength? No. I mean, we're talking about the most heavily taxed state in the country, and yet I'm living here, we still run a huge budget deficit. No. Democrat policies are killing us. It's not just Joe Biden. Gavin Newsom, airdropped in, is not the solution. Could he win? Yeah, he could. Why? Because he's got $1 trillion smile and semi-perfect hair. That's about it. And of course, because they'll cheat. But it's a whole other discussion. The same goes for Democrats' abortion radicalism. Now, Donald Trump isn't nearly as pro-life as I and many other conservatives and Christians are or would like him to be. And I fall into that category. I wish he was far more pro-life. I would love to see the end of abortion altogether, but that's a whole other discussion for another day. After 50 years of unconstitutional Roe v. Wade supremacy, former President Trump nominated the Supreme Court justices that overturned the abominable precedent. He now advocates for about as moderate an abortion as you can get in states. Yeah, okay. So California and Florida can enact opposite laws, and the other 48 states can do everything in between. That's Trump's position, and they're saying that's radical. Even Joe Biden during the debate was trying to say, oh, he's going to try to outlaw abortion altogether, and Trump has never said that. Trump doesn't want that. I wish he would. Okay, I wish they would outlaw abortion altogether, but he's not going to do that. He's going to, like he says, leave it up to the states, right? Back to the article. Biden, meanwhile, can't articulate his abortion position other than saying Roe over and over. That's because he, like all other Democrats in positions of power, supports a woman's non-existent, quote-unquote, right to kill her unborn child at any point up until birth for no reason other than that the idea of being pregnant makes her feel sad. As her colleague Jordan Boyd wrote, the majority of voters reject this, and, in fact, most Republicans, Democrats, and independent voters say they support protecting unborn babies beginning at 15 weeks. Okay? Again, I don't want abortion at all, but 15 weeks from a political perspective sounds reasonable to most voters. That's what they want. That's not what Joe Biden wants, and most importantly, that's not what Democrats want. On and on it goes. The foreign policy, welfare, and subsidy and bailout spending that have helped drive up inflation over the past 3+ years are Democrat policies, not just Joe Biden policies. The soft on crime ideology, the push for self-styled progressive district attorneys, and defund the police movement, among other perversions of justice, are again Democrat pet projects, not a Biden unique quirk. And our two-tiered system of justice, led by the deep state, rogue state prosecutors, and leftist executives, wouldn't stop just because Biden isn't on the ticket. The same people who raided the home of pro-lifers while seeking immunity for the Biden family prosecuted one man for classified documents while letting other worse offenders go free, and made up novel legal theories and new statutes of limitation to gag, fine, and ultimately imprison their chief political opponent are beholden to a party, not just a sitting president. In other words, lawfare is a Democrat thing. It's not a Biden thing. Lawfare will continue even if Biden is not the nominee. So when the Democrat armchair class suddenly gets weepy about Biden's decline, saying Democrats have a problem after Biden's debate performance, don't buy the spin that a shiny new Democrat could bail America out. It isn't just Biden that ruined America. It's his party. Well done, Kylie Griswold, over at thefederalist.com. And I would argue, and I think the argument is very clear, that not only could a different nominee, a different Democrat, do better than Biden, I think they would do worse, especially some of the ones that they're talking about to replace him. I think that they are far more radical than Joe. Look, we've talked about how Joe Biden is not the moderate that they were claiming he was during the 2020 election. That's clear. But he's still not nearly as radical as, like, Gavin Newsom, for example. I mean, Gavin Newsom, this guy might as well, he would fit in better, alongside Emmanuel Macron. Okay, he would fit in better, as the president of Ukraine with Zelensky. He would fit in better as a communist dictator, because that's essentially what he is. So don't tell me that his policies are going to be an improvement over Joe. The only thing he would improve is the hair and the smile, and of course the mental acuity. But no, I mean, he's not the solution. We need to make sure that every American knows this, as many of them as possible. We need to know that no matter whoever replaces him, there are. I mean, look, if they replaced him, let's say they replaced Joe Biden with Joe Manchin. Okay, so maybe he is more moderate. Maybe he is more sane than Joe Biden. But then they're not talking about Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema or Tulsi Gabbard, who's, I guess, none of them. It's funny, I mentioned three that are technically, none of them are actually Democrats anymore. Okay, or Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's also not a Democrat anymore, right? Allegedly. So you got those ones. Those might be better than Joe. Okay, seriously. I mean, I'm not saying they'd be good. I wouldn't support them. I'm just saying that they might be better for America than Joe Biden. But Michelle Obama would not. Hillary Clinton would not. Gretchen Whitmer would not. And Gavin Newsom definitely would not. The people they're talking about airdropping in to replace Joe Biden are worse. And we need to make sure that Americans understand, not just your fellow, like-minded Republicans or conservatives or patriots or populists or America First MAGA, whatever. Not just them. The independents need to know. And yes, Democrats need to know. They need to know that replacing Joe Biden is not the magic button to bring back the old school Democrats of Robert F. Kennedy of John F. Kennedy. Okay? Those days, Democrats, some of them, John F. Kennedy included, weren't so bad. Today, they are. We did have some very big news coming out of the Supreme Court today. Well, two cases in particular. One is huge. The other one is actually huge too, but it's not going to get nearly as much attention because of the aforementioned previous huge one. We'll talk about the big one, the J6 one that everybody wants to talk about here in a moment. But I do want to focus on the Chevron ruling first, because it is one that's not going to get nearly as much attention, obviously, because it's dealing with basically a couple of fishermen who get their rights back, so to speak, or at least the ability to exercise their rights. And this one is arguably the biggest win for small businesses in a long time as it pertains to the Supreme Court. We had an article over at thelibertydaily.com via Daily Caller. Caitlin Richardson is the author. Supreme Court delivers crippling blow to permanent bureaucracy's power over our lives. And that's not an overstatement. Okay, it was a crippling blow, and it is about the bureaucratic state, their power over us, particularly when it comes to small businesses. According to the article, the Supreme Court handed small fishing companies a victory Friday in their lawsuits against the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, overturning a decades-old precedent that expanded the powers of the administrative state. And again, that is not even close to an overstatement. Essentially, you have these fishing companies, very tiny fishing companies. They have their boats, they're going out fishing, and they have to have this federal government mandated onboard observers, which is already annoying enough because it's like they're just fishing. What are you scared that they're going to destroy the ocean in their fishing boat? Whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to get into Noah's idiocy, but I will get into the idiocy of the government itself, forcing these small companies to pay the $700 salaries, $700 per day. I mean, let's just stop right there, because because that's ludicrous. $700 per day these guys are getting paid to go on a fishing boat and enjoy a cruise and be onboard observers. It's like, is that net environmentally friendly? I don't even know what they do. I couldn't tell you. I had no idea what they do, if they do anything at all. But the government was telling them, look, you have to put these guys on your boats, and you have to pay $700 a day for them. Now, keep in mind, these guys aren't like raking in like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a day in revenues. They're getting about $3,500 a day worth of fish that they then have to sell. So we're talking about 20% of their daily revenue going just to this government mandated onboard observer. According to the articles, citing 6-3, with the fishermen, the Supreme Court reversed its 1984 landmark case, Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council, which lower courts relied on to uphold NOAA's rules, forcing companies to dole out $700 per day, around 20% of their revenue, to pay the salaries of federally mandated onboard observers. The principle of Chevron's deference, rooted in the landmark case, instructed courts to defer to reasonable agency interpretations of statutes when the language is ambiguous. In other words, what they're saying is, what Chevron was saying is that, look, if you got these agencies, departments, these bureaucrats that say, if they say that this must be mandated, then if it's ambiguous, you gotta just rely on them. In other words, you can't sue over it. You can't go to court and say, hey, this is wrong. And the court will say, well, Chevron, it's basically, long story short, it's Chevron's way, or the court's way of not having to do what they're supposed to do. It's a way of shirking their responsibilities. That's what they were doing. That's what Chevron did. It's like, oh, wow. Much fewer cases to deal with. According to, this is Chief Justice Roberts, who's rarely right, but in this case he is. Chevron is overruled. Courts must exercise their independent judgment in deciding whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority, as it was called the Administrative Procedures Act requires. Small fishing companies sued NOAA after the agency required businesses to pay for the onboard monitors based on its interpretation of the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which is the law that governs the fishery management. In both of those cases, lower courts deferred to the agency's interpretation of the law, citing the Chevron ruling. Roberts called Chevron, quote, a judicial invention that required judges to disregard their statutory duties. Perhaps most fundamentally, Chevron's presumption is misguided because agencies have no special competence in resolving statutory ambiguities. That's what courts are supposed to do. In other words, if there's an interpretation, there's a law, there's a statute, there's something where you've got an agency that's going to defer to this. It's up to the agency to determine whether or not they're doing it right. I mean, that's literally what Chevron was saying. Saying, oh, well, if the agency says this, and the victim, in this case fishermen, if they're saying something different, well, it's because of Chevron. The agency is right in imposing themselves upon this small business. It was ludicrous from the beginning. It was lazy by the courts, and now, praise God, this Supreme Court has overturned it. Critics of Chevron argued the doctrine in practice enabled agencies to assert their interpretations of the law without resistance from the judiciary, giving the government the automatic upper hand when challenged in court and raising significant separation of powers concerns. Because, again, this is executive branch being able to oppress individuals, and those individuals or companies had no recourse to go to the courts. That's not how checks and balances work. You need to be able to go to the courts and say, hey, this is ludicrous. Why do we have to pay $700 for them to have an onboard observer when, it's stupid? And the courts are like, oh, well, Chevron, nothing we can do about it. Chevron. Well, they can't do that anymore. New England Fishermen's Stewardship Association highlighted the burden NOAA's rule placed on businesses in an amicus brief. The short training sea monitors receive. Okay, sorry. Let me read this in English. The short training that sea monitors receive does not equip them for the rough conditions on board, the association argued, creating safety concerns and forcing crews to shoulder the burden. Justice Alina Kagan wrote in the dissent that the majority disdains restraint and grasps for power. It's funny. That's like those who know the leftists on the Supreme Court, they're not all in unison. I know we like to think that they all think the same, but they actually don't. They're stupid in different ways. Okay, Sotomayor, as well as Ketanji, they all have their different stupidities. In this one, Kagan is a big fan of authoritarianism. She wants government control over every aspect of our lives, as she noted in her dissent. And I'm not even going to try to read the rest of it because it is just absolutely ludicrous. Bottom line is that this is a huge victory for small businesses, a huge way for us as a nation to be able to finally start pushing back against the bureaucratic state. And that's really what this comes down to, is that the bureaucratic state had used Chevron for decades, used Chevron as a way to say we say this, we say that we have this authority in this ambiguous statute. The business owners will say, no, you don't. And the courts would say, well, technically they do. They have the authority to determine whether or not they're right. And we can't do anything about it. That's gone. Praise God. Praise God. Let's take a quick break, and then when we get back, we will have that big news about J6 and Donald Trump. Oh, boy. Did the Supreme Court do right this time? So stay tuned. If you have been paying attention in recent years, and I know you have been, obviously, because you're watching my show, so clearly you're not sticking your head in the sand. You want to hear the truth. But if you have been paying attention, then you realize that over the last, 3.5, 4 years, things have been going pretty darn crazy. And it isn't just the pandemic. We should have been in full-blown recovery mode since then. Things are crazy for other reasons, and I think you know why. I am very blessed, pleased, and honored to be working with a company that helps people to secure their retirement, secure their life's savings. This is a company that doesn't just work with me, works with some much more important people than me, people such as Mike Lindell. If you go to rumblegold.com, you can work with Genesis Gold Group, and you can sign up, get a free definitive gold and silver guide, help you make sure that you're doing the right things as far as your investments go. People like Dean Cain, there's Mike Lindell again on the screen. You got people like Joe Altman, Conservative Daily Podcast, one of my good friends. He's fantastic. All three of them are, and I might not be fantastic myself, but at least I do know a thing or two when it comes to trying to defend our nation, when it comes to trying to spread the gospel. Genesis is an unabashedly faith-driven company. This is why they don't do things such as offering free silver. Look, if you want to listen to the ads that say, buy our gold and silver, and we'll give you $10,000 in free silver in exchange for a $299 processing fee, then my goodness, have fun with that. No, don't actually. Don't have fun with that, because there's nothing fun once you realize what the actual numbers are like. Go to rumblegold.com if you have a retirement, if you have wealth that you want to protect, and you want to protect it with physical precious metals. Rumblegold.com is the place to go. Endorsed by Mike Lindell, and perhaps more importantly, endorsed by me. All right, now we get to the big news, the big story of the day, one of the big stories, but the big story, at least out of the Supreme Court, the one that everybody's going to be talking about as it pertains to both January 6th and Donald Trump. Before we get to that, I want to just state for the record. Now, I was on last night with Joe Altman we were doing a live debate, debate watch. It was more like a debate cringe, because that's what we ended up doing for the most of the time. But we were talking through it afterwards, or it might have actually been before, but at some point the subject of January 6th came up, and he asked me what I thought, and my perspective has always been that just pardon them all. Some will say, well, you should take each individual case and determine if, and I'm like, nope. These people, these political prisoners, whether they did something minorly wrong or really not wrong at all, doesn't matter. Let them go. And I'm not just talking about commuting their sentences or anything like that. I'm saying they deserve a full pardon. Okay? Their lives have been turned upside down. And their intention, and I don't know the hearts and minds of all 100% of them, but from what I could tell, the intention of the vast majority of them, and perhaps even all of them, was in defense of their nation. This wasn't like they were sitting there trying to start an insurrection, despite what the corporate media narrative claims. These people were not trying to harm their country. They were trying to help, to save their country. They were there to protest because they believed, and I believe rightly so, they believed that they were witnessing essentially a coup in the form of election interference, election, voter fraud, whatever you want to call it. That was their thought. That was their intention. That's what they thought they were addressing. Did they make mistakes? Sure, some of them did. Some of them I still think didn't. We have to take into consideration a few things. Number one, and this is the biggest one, is that now that we know that they were egged on, they were ushered in many cases, that the deep state, the FBI, there was even Antifa. There were many people that were trying to make this happen. This was entrapment, in my humble opinion. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to plead any cases here. But the circumstances, from my layman perspective, tells me that these people were victimized, intentionally victimized. And so, yeah, I say pardon them all. Pardon them all across the board. Okay? I mean, we've seen murderers get pardoned. Murderers that were convicted, where it was very clear they were murderers, and yet they got pardoned for whatever reason. My hope, my prayer, my strong desire is that when President Trump is back in the Oval Office, that his very first action is to instantaneously pardon everybody involved. Thankfully, today we do have some great news. So hopefully there will be at least fewer people in jail as a result of the J6 shenanigans. According to Matt Vespa over at Town Hall, SCOTUS hands down huge decision affecting J6 defendants. It's a very muted headline considering how big this is. Supreme Court has taken a judicial katana to a statute that federal prosecutors weaponized to go after those who participated in the January 6th incident. The question before the court was whether the obstruction, in his quote, the obstruction of an official proceeding, that statute, if that could be used in how the Justice Department weaponized it to go after hundreds of January 6 defendants. As SCOTUS blog covered in April, the plaintiff, Joseph Fisher, a former police officer, argued that the statute only pertains to evidence tampering in a congressional investigation. During oral arguments, justices weren't convinced by the government's interpretation, arguing that it could cast too much of a net. In other words, that this whole, obstruction of an official proceeding, it's being weaponized, obviously. It's being overly broad in its interpretation, and as they were saying, it's casting too wide, is really what they're saying, too wide of a net. In a 6-3 opinion, the Supreme Court handed down a massive blow to federal prosecutors, concluding, per SCOTUS blog's Amy Howe, that for the statute to be used in this way, there must be evidence to the fact that the, quote, the defendant impaired the availability or integrity for use in an official proceeding of records. The defendant impaired the availability or integrity for use in an official proceeding of records. In a blow to the narrative that the Supreme Court is rogue and right-wing, that's what they're claiming, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson joined the majority. I love it. And then Justice Amy Coney Barrett dissented because don't get me started. Don't get me started. And don't just say, oh, Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade. Don't get me started. It's a good day. I'm not gonna go off on Amy Coney Barrett. Let's just stop right there. The court holds that to prove a violation of the law, the government must show that the defendant impaired the availability or integrity for use in an official proceeding of records, documents, objects, or other things used in an official proceeding, or attempted to do so. The court reverses the D.C. Circuit, which had adopted a broader reading of the law to allow the charges against Fisher to go forward. The case now goes back to the D.C. Circuit, which, the court says, can assess whether the indictment can still stand in light of this new and narrower interpretation. Justice Jackson, who joined the majority opinion, also has a concurring opinion. She stresses that despite the, quote, the shocking circumstances involved in this case, that the court's task is to determine what conduct is prescribed by the criminal statute that has been invoked as the basis for the obstruction charge at issue here. In other words, and let's actually break down what they're saying and then what she's saying, because they're slightly different. Even though they're on the same side, there is a slightly different understanding of what's happening here. What they're saying is this, is that you can't just go say, oh, we can invoke this and call this a violation of the law because they were there. Okay, they were obstructing the certification of the 2020 election with their presence. No. In other words, to be able to use this, and that's not to say that what they were doing was legal or illegal. What they're saying is that to be able to use that statute, to use that interpretation of the law, there needs to be some material obstruction. Like, just for example, if they had somebody had gone in and grabbed the secret ballots, grabbed them off the table and ran out. Okay, then you could use this. But none of them did that. They were grabbing podiums. They were grabbing Nancy Pelosi's items off Nancy Pelosi's desk, none of which had anything to do with obstructing an official event, an official action by the government. Now, according to, let's reread what Justice Jackson said, the shocking circumstances. So she's not happy. She's like, I'm against J6, but the court's task is to determine what conduct is prescribed by the criminal statute that has been invoked as the basis for the obstruction charge at issue here. In other words, what she's saying is that the court can't, the Department of Justice can't say this is where the crime is committed, and then the court can't say, well, we agree that is the crime, even though the statute doesn't make that clear. So, in essence, she's basically citing, in a way, and I hate to put it like this because I'm happy that she's on the right side of this, but in reality what she's saying is you can't call it a crime unless it's called a crime by those who might be committing the crime. I know it sounds weird, but this is her thinking, and it's understandable in a way, but it doesn't matter. Like, you could say, well, we didn't need her vote. It's still good, because this gives some credibility. I'm on the surface having somebody on the left side of the court siding with this gives us, it's a win. It's a huge win. Okay? If it had been 7-3, if Amy Coney Barrett had done her thing, then hey, it'd be an even bigger win, but she didn't. So whatever. The decision is a huge win for the some 300 January 6 defendants who had their lives upended by a partisan, corrupt, and overreaching Biden Justice Department, who had treated these people like an unholy mix of the Rosenbergs, Aldrich Ames, and Robert Hansen. As previously stated, Amy had an excellent write-up on this and how the case finally ended up before the Supreme Court, and I am not going to read that. I will read this. As noted above, the Fisher case leaches into the indictment that special counsel Jack Smith filed against former President Donald Trump over his alleged role in the January 6th incident. Today's ruling struck a major blow to the foundation of this case, but we still need to wait to hear how the court rules on presidential immunities to see if these cases collapse. And as I'm doing this show, unfortunately, we have not seen that ruling yet. I am super excited to wait for that one. Just couldn't do it. Needed to get this show up as quickly as possible. So, hope, and you know what? I'll do another show. Maybe I'll add it to the second hour of the show if the time allows. Which you can see, for those who don't know, you see the first hour over the RVM News Rumble channel. Second hour goes over on frankspeech.com. And then if you go to jdrucker.com/rumble, you'll just get to see the one single show. Quick note before I continue with the story. Quick note, we are adding next week, another 30-minute segment. I'm just going to piece together different shows into one show, right? We're adding another 30-minute segment that will be live over on worldviewtube.com. Brandon House, my good buddy, is doing his thing, and we'll actually be able to take live callers and everything, so it's going to be fun. Unfortunately, it's only 30 minutes, but who knows? If it's popular enough, maybe I can talk them into giving me a full hour. Who knows? Maybe I could talk them into giving me 2 or 3. And if you're new to the show, Yes, I can do 3 hours nonstop, no problem. As a matter of fact, it's hard for me to try to squeeze these into 1 hour, 1 hour mini shows and whatever. Okay. So, law professor, back to the article. Law professor Jonathan Turley elaborated further that this decision ripped the wings of Smith's case, adding that there might be a way to keep this indictment together, but it's being held up by duct tape. In other words, so Smith has already said, Special counsel Robert Smith has already said that he's going to figure out a way to circumvent the Supreme Court ruling. People had anticipated this was going to be the case. I don't think they expected Ketanji Jackson Brown to vote her way or Amy Coney Barrett to vote her way, both opposites. But I think the end result was anticipated. And so Smith, in his case, he still wants to continue to use lawfare to weaponize something against Donald Trump. Especially after last night's debate performance, you can't really blame him. But with that said, according to Turley, who is, I am not a constitutional scholar or attorney. Jonathan Turley is. So we trust him. Back to the article. The trespass charges aren't touched, but hundreds of those arguably politically motivated and bogus charges for the defendants must be reviewed. Pray to God that during this review process, that number one, it's swift. Number two, it goes on the right side, because this could free some amazing, innocent patriots who have been persecuted, who've been oppressed, who've been tortured in many ways. People who have had far worse experiences with the so-called Justice Department than actual criminals get. They are political prisoners, period. They're being persecuted because of their allegiance, not because of their crimes. Their allegiance was to the United States, the Constitution, and to Donald Trump. That's why they are in jail, not because of anything they actually did, because there are far worse crimes that don't get prosecuted at all in America today. And I'm not suggesting that should be the precedent or that should be the way things are. I would love to see actual criminals prosecuted. But in this case, the January 6 people, they're just not. I mean, they are not criminals. They do not need this treatment. And the sooner they can be released, the better. Finish this up. According to Chief Justice John Roberts, Monday is the last day before the summer recess starts, and the final decisions will be read at 9:30 a.m. So we will see. Monday should be a big day for the Supreme Court. But so far, so good. I mean, look, this has been very good for us. This last week of this session so far has given us some positive stuff. There's also been some not so positive stuff. We've covered that earlier this week. My hope is that when the immunity decision is sent down, that it is appropriate, because right now, clearly, we need Donald Trump back in office. I know not all of my audience. There are some of you out there, and I see the comments. I get the emails. You can always reach out to me, by the way, by going to jdrucker.com/talk. But I get the emails all the time where there are people that say, "Look, I'm a conservative, I'm a patriot, but I don't trust Trump." I get people that try to convince me that he's a deep state ploy. He's been compromised. He was never any good. That might be the case. Look, I'm not going to sit back and say, "Oh, definitively, there's zero chance of this, that, or the other." I don't think he is. Pretty sure he's not. But I can't say, I don't have insights into the deep state. I don't have insights into the globalist elite cabal, the powers and principalities. All I can go by is track record, actions, and words. And Trump's track record and his actions, for the most part, let's take Operation Warp Speed out of the equation for now. For the most part, they have been very positive for the United States of America and for American citizens and American freedoms. So, compared to the alternative, which at this stage, the only alternative would be either Joe Biden or Joe Biden's replacement, it's a no-brainer. I don't need to scrutinize everything that Trump says or does. With that said, hopefully we will see good things from SCOTUS. Hopefully we will see good things from this show, because we are going to continue to press forward regardless of what happens Monday. All right, let's play a little Jeopardy here. The answer is this bar. This bar is the answer to the question I'm about to ask. The question, though, is how do you carry around wealth in your wallet? How do you make wealth that's portable, that you can break apart because it's perforated, that you can use for emergency situations as a way to have essentially wealth in your wallet? Well, that's why we have the Prepper Bar, and I'm very excited to introduce it to you. It will be both silver and gold. It's available, and it's a awesome little 62-gram bar that literally fits in your wallet. I wish I had my wallet with me. I do. I have it right here. I'm going to demonstrate because I'm not just playing around here. Here's my wallet, if you can see it on the screen. And here's my Prepper Bar. You could take it. I'm not going to break it because this is mine. But you could take it. You could break apart little bits and pieces from it. It is absolutely amazing. I am super, super proud and super blessed to have this available as wealth, literally wealth in my wallet. You too can own your own Prepper Bars. You can get a bunch of them, stick them in the safe. You can put 1 or 2 or 5 in your wallet or in your purse or wherever to keep with you just in case. You know, you take a bar, you might have to shave off parts of it. Well, you wouldn't have to do that here. If you need to trade or barter for food or safe passage or anything like that, Prepper Bar is the answer. And it is available exclusively from the one company. If you are interested, then go. You don't even have to tell them I sent you. Just go visit prepperbarnow.com. That's prepperbarnow.com.